December is upon us, my friends. There's sirens in the background. I am at home right now. This is the Patreon podcast for December 2020. The year is wrapping up, and guess what? It looks like it's going to turn out to be the 49-state shred. I figured as much as, of course, the whole Thanksgiving Day spike is going to just cause cases and the virus to be spreading like crazy here in the great United States of America. Everything was set to go to Kauai, but Kauai opted out of the pre-travel testing thing. Their threshold for cases was very, very low. If they had like an average of 4 cases a day, they were going to shut down everything. I think maybe it was 7 cases a day. Whatever it was like 7-day average of not that many cases, where it's like, that's pretty impossible. So it is what it is. I could have canceled my flight, switched it to Maui, gone to Maui, spent thousands of dollars to stay in Maui and get it done. It didn't feel right. You know, a lot of this travel and stuff felt okay, but now it's like, it's fine. It's good. I'm good. I don't need to be traveling, flying, and doing all this stuff. The effort was made. I feel really, really good. I think I did all kinds of stuff. I accomplished my goal. I got to tell all kinds of stories. I got to see all kinds of things. It's quite all right that I didn't make it to Hawaii. I made it there last year. That was really cool. That video was awesome. And obviously not that many people saw it. It's so funny, all the different questions I get about different stuff. And it's like, man, the attention span / my archive / the YouTube algorithm, the stuff just doesn't pop up for some people. And it's like, yeah, I've got thousands of videos. I got all kinds of stuff. It's all there. As a big-time tourism advocate, I'm so scared for what Hawaii is going to turn into. It's just, you can't put everything on pause forever without killing off all these businesses. And like, how do you get people to reinvest and bring money back in if people know that there aren't any, there's no cruises anymore, there's no luau's anymore, they all went out of business? How do you bring people back? How do you start from scratch? I guess, by next summer, everybody's going to be flooding back and everything is going to be going gangbusters. And I guess people will have money to invest and stuff. But it just seems like there will be a pinch. And Hawaii just doesn't have a blue-collar technology, industrial underlayment. They don't have anything but tourism. It's a very poor place in general. And it's sad. I'm so curious to see how this is all going to play out over the years in slow motion, I think. And we'll see. If you're watching the video version of the podcast, I'm in my van right now. I'm in very grungy clothes because I've been doing a lot of work on the house. I've got termites. That's no good. But I think we've got it all figured out. That turned into new floors and getting stuff painted in the house. I've lived in my house now for 10 years. It is a great little spot. Eventually, we'll be moving someday. But it's so funny because I forget if I told this story or not. They all blend together, but a few weeks ago, this guy was like a home inspector or something like that, and he got out of his car and he's like, "Hey, Brian, oh man, love your videos." And that was like the first person to ever see where I lived. I've had friends over and different stuff, but that was like the first random person, kind of thing, like, oh crap. And then not a week later, another guy came walking up my driveway and was like, "Hey, are you Brian?" I'm like, oh, it's time to sell the house. And then a week after that, finding termites. It's just like, oh man. The second that first guy recognized me, I should have been like, "Oh, I'm moving. See you later." Let's get into the questions here. David Johnson with the question every single month that I get every single time. But every single time it's a little different. So it's worth asking every single month. What's next for you? What is your next move? So last month in the November podcast, I talked a lot about this. Basically, for December. Hey, let's just talk about for December then. Like 2021, I laid it all out on the last podcast. But for December, it's going to be tough. I got to kind of get some good content ideas going and still get some content out, some good videos. I've got a couple ideas, but I feel like everything's going to be a little lame in December while I'm kind of getting my act together, what I want to do to roll out into the new year. I want to spend like a month at a time in destinations next year, at least a month, maybe longer. And of course, that could totally change with COVID and everything else. But that's my hope, is to anchor down in locations and to really get to know people and do trail work and make cool videos and really show off a spot. That's the idea. But I have to actually, the weather has to get good enough for those places to actually be accessible. There are some places that I could go, like Phoenix or, St. George, Utah, that probably would still work in January or something like that. But so December is really kind of it'll be a kind of a weird month, and probably January too. So I don't really know. I've got a couple kind of crappy ideas. I'm going to have to come up with a couple kind of good ideas, because it just sucks to kind of lull everything out. But that's kind of what the 50-state shred was. It was that I could say, hey, I've got this idea, and it kind of worked for me, and I could spend more time thinking about 2021, which I have, and I've done a lot of work for 2021. A bunch of stuff, like I've said over and over, that I can't really tell you about yet until it actually comes to fruition. It's just a seed. It's just a tiny seed that I'm trying to water, and it takes a whole lot of water to get it going. So yeah, always hopeful, always planning, always wanting to give you guys some really good stuff. Dan Spalding wants to know how much I think about getting injured. All of my choices are guided by, hey, I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to feel pain right now. But I don't really think, oh my God, if I get injured, oh God, if I get injured, oh, I don't want to get injured. Like, I don't have that mindset. But yeah, when I'm riding, it's like, no, I'm good. I don't see anything good coming of this. Breaking my bike, breaking me, stuff I know that is with, like, beyond my skill. It's like, no, I'm good. So I've always had that kind of tendency to be more safe when I'm riding. So yeah, I don't really think about it that much, but if it happens, it happens. I just don't, there is always a thought, like when I go to Spain or something like this, when I go to these places where it's like, oh man, it'd be pretty crazy if I really hurt myself and I had to come back on the plane and crutches and all that stuff. But this is what I do. I got to keep going and keep doing and keep fighting and keep getting better and all that stuff. And, most people get hurt and then most people come back from it. So even if it is surgery, even if it is, torn rotator cuff, whatever it is, what the collarbone thing that happens to everybody, happened to Sarah. She doesn't seem to, I think it was her collarbone, maybe it was her shoulder, separated shoulder. But she doesn't talk about it. She doesn't think about it. She still gets out there and rides. And I'm sure she thinks about it a little bit. And I think it does kind of hurt her every once in a while. But it's not a constant topic of conversation like you think it would be. Oh my God, I'm hurt. I'm laying in this hospital bed. Oh, life is never going to be the same. And then, a year later, you're like, oh yeah, it kind of hurts. It kind of sucks. Jeff Rogers wants to know, is the van life in your blood now? If you're home for a certain amount of time, do you feel like you need to be on the road? That's a good question, actually. I do really like the travel. I like the hecticness of going out and getting these videos done and editing them and then moving on to the next one and kind of doing my job, showing off this stuff and getting out there and putting something out into the world that people are going to see. I love that. Traveling, I love it, and but I like being home too. There's a million things at home that I can do and work on. I'll talk about that later. I think I saw one of the questions, but there is like an ebb and flow of like, oh, okay, let's get back out on the road and go travel and go do stuff. Iron Cutter MTB wants to know if he can buy my van. Hey, everything's got a price, my man. I'm definitely willing to sell for the right price. I have been thinking about that. I go back and forth, but I feel like I'm pretty locked in to keeping the van pretty much forever. The dollars and the cents don't make a lot of sense. It is expensive. It's like a $900 a month toy to just have sitting in the driveway most days. But man, getting out on the road, doing a little trip with Sarah, going to Yosemite, going up to, going to Santa Cruz to ride, going up, going down, going left, going right. It's the best. It's just so amazing. I never really thought that I would love it so much and how comfortable it is to be able to open up the door, put out the camp chairs, and just sit and picnic. It's like a dream. It's just so amazing. But it is expensive. It's not as expensive as most vans. I got away with spending maybe around 50 grand, less than 50 grand, something like that. So I got away friggin' scot-free. Yeah, that's the the saying. I got away scot-free compared to so many other people that are going 100 grand, 120 grand on their vans. So I can't complain much, but hey, I like to complain. Let's complain a little bit. It's expensive to be sitting out in the front yard for most of its use, for most of its life. So don't like that so much, but I love it so much. Just to have it forever will be very, very cool, and the memories and the awesomeness. Yeah, love it. Sean Carter says, "How are you doing, Brian? With everything going on, the pandemic, a new girlfriend, a new year is coming. Just making sure you're getting the support you're always offering us." Yeah, I'm doing great. I've never done better. It's been a great year. It's disappointing. I'm not going to be able to go to Hawaii, but in the big scheme of things, it is not that big a deal. It's been a great year. It's been a terrible year. There's been ups. There's been downs. I haven't talked about this, but my best buddy died a few weeks ago from cancer. He'd been battling cancer for years now. He started in his eye. He had ocular melanoma spread to his kidneys. And 38 years old, wife and 2 kids. He's gone. And been a friend, buddy since high school. Really my best friend. And just crazy that this 2020, man, it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. And we all have stories like this, I think. And the longer you live, the more stories like it you have, and the more you see that it's just all about moving forward. It's all about just what you can control. There's only so many things you can control in your life, and getting the most out of life, and not letting a pandemic spoil your entire, thing. I could have easily been like, I can't travel, I can't do it, it's too much. And instead it's like, hey, I got the van, I can be safe enough and get out there and make these videos and impact lives, and it's very much worth it. Instead of the longer you wait, the more you put on pause. I think about my buddy Josh and all the BS meetings or stuff where you were waiting in line, all the time you wasted, and now he's gone and he'll never have all that wasted time back. And it's just I never want to be on some conference call ever again of oh yeah, okay, we're doing that, okay, It's no, sorry, man. My time is way more valuable than that. All of our time is way more valuable than that. Email me. Bruce Mann Jr. wants to know what video editing program I use. I use Final Cut Pro. I have a MacBook Pro that works pretty good. It's pretty fast, never fast enough, but it gets the job done. Thomas Lokar wants to know what I'm getting Sarah for Christmas. I can't talk about those details. Sarah listens to the podcast, but I do like being thoughtful and getting gifts, so I got a couple things. I got a couple things for this holiday season. David Schmidt wants to know, what do you think the next big game changer for mountain bike content creators will be? That's a good question. I keep thinking it's going to be virtual reality stuff, but that stuff takes forever, and the adoption rate and all that stuff, it'll probably be another 5-10 years before that really crests. But really feeling like you're in the game, you're on the bike, that immersion. There's so much going on when we're on the bike that we get used to. And to actually be able to bring that experience to a normal person, I think is what the virtual reality thing is going to be able to do. When you can actually immerse yourself and see stereoscopic vision, where you can see how high up you are, how close you are to some random objects. It seems inevitable, and I think that's a great way to bring people along for the ride. Carrie Litvak wants to know, where do you think's a great place that needs a bike shop? Oh man, all the great places already have too many bike shops. That's kind of a funny thing. I haven't been to Bellingham, Washington to ride, maybe one tiny little ride, and I swear somebody said they had 12 bike shops or 13 bike shops in Bellingham, which is a great sign. And if all those places can stay in business. Vallejo, California has 0 bike shops. There's one in Benicia, but for this little area here where there's good mountain biking around here, there's definitely a need eventually. I think if we get more trails here in this area, there will be a need, but it's not really there yet. And with the way the whole politics of the trail building and all that stuff that I'm trying to get more and more involved with, it's so discouraging. So discouraging. Daniel Macias wants to know, who designs my merch? Yeah, this time around I designed it, and I got some help from Cody from Hand Up Gloves to kind of actually execute, but I gave him a pretty strict, like, hey, here's exactly what I want, and he came pretty dang close to what I wanted. It's still not quite right. Like, working with designers is the toughest thing, man. Like, I hate it. Like, I have such a vision. Well, I kind of don't have any vision, but then I do have vision. And it's like, you see artists and they do their work, and it's like, man, that's amazing. Hey, how about, oh, no, you can't really translate it this. Like, you have to spell everything out for an artist, and I hate that so much. I just want someone to run wild and who gets it. And when you see great art and great design, it's just so amazing. Like the Trail Pittsburgh jersey that I have, the yellow and black one, if you've seen it in my videos, it's like, man, that jersey is so cool. But I am pretty damn happy with my new BKXC jersey, the new BKXC gloves. I think it's the closest I've gotten to like, yes, this is badass. This is like so amazing, so cool, and it's there. But since I did it, it's still like, oh, I'm not an artist kind of thing. So I kind of always have a chip on my shoulder about that, or not a chip on my shoulder, but like I always feel less than that. It's like it's imposter syndrome type thing where it's like I did do a good job. I think they look pretty awesome, but for me to have to like do it all myself is like such a bummer. Aaron Gifford wants to know, in the evening, would you rather play a game, visit a relative, or watch a movie or read? I like visiting relatives. I used to do that a lot before the dark days of 2020. That's kind of like my thing. Head over to my aunt's house, my uncle's house, text them and say, hey, are you around? I'm coming by, and get in little hour-long visits and just really get to stay close like that. I love doing that. That is the magic of living near your family. Not many people can say that. Not many people have the privilege. I kind of made it a point my entire life. Like, I'm not going to move. I want to stay here. I want to stay nearby my mom and dad. And then in extension, all my aunts and uncles and cousins. We only have one cousin that lives out of state in Utah, and it's pretty funny that we've done pretty good. Some, one other cousin lives like 4 or 5 hours away, so that's pretty far. But we've done pretty good to stay pretty tight. David Pearson wants to know, are there any hobbies you wish you could start but haven't had the time? I think we always have time. You think you make excuses, you say, oh, I don't have the time. But if you actually audited the hours in the day, there's always an hour. There's always an hour you could find during the day, probably even 2 hours during the day, that instead of watching TV, instead of watching movies, instead of frivolously doing stuff on YouTube or wherever that time you could find it, you could put it into a hobby. For me, it's learning Spanish. And someday maybe I will make it a priority, but until then, it's not. Siobhan Baines wants to know, what do you consider a long drive? You've done much driving this year. It must change the way you view driving distances. Yeah, 13-hour day is pretty much a long drive, and however many miles that is, but time, it's very much about the time. But 10-hour drives are very doable. Sometimes they can get annoying, but that 11th hour, the 12th hour, and the 13th hour, that is tough. That's the furthest I can go is 13 hours, and even that's pretty much a stretch. Most of my drives were 10-hour drives, and it just kind of works out that way that I split it up that way because, maybe it's 20 hours to my destination, so instead of trying to do 13 and 7, you do 10 and 10. And, oh, man, those long drives. I love them, though. It gets you to where you're going. As long as you're not going from through Kansas, it's usually pretty cool. Feldy Bikes wants to know what I am thankful for. Oh, man, 1,000,001 things. I can tell you that much. I still feel like the luckiest person to get to do this job and to get to just like bring joy to people and impact people and get them to go travel. It's the best. It's really, how could you ever come up with a better job that I can do this every day? And like, my job is to think of innovative ways to get people to laugh and have fun and get excited and be like, oh yeah, maybe I should get out my mountain bike. Maybe I should get out and go do this stuff. So number one is always family, but number two, the job is pretty amazing. But yeah, so thankful for my family, and our losses over the past couple of years have been crappy, but we're tighter for it. We'll be even more thankful when we can get back together. Maybe by Easter, have a nice big blowout family get together, and it's great to have that whole support group and that safety net and these people with all our shared memories and all our community and all that stuff. And of course, meeting Sarah. Who would have thought during the pandemic that would ever happen, that I could meet someone and just get on such the same page with her. So 1,000,001 things to be thankful for, and it's pretty cliche though. Bent Wheel wants to know how many miles I rode over the 50-state shred. Strava has me at 1,100 miles right now, and that's pretty good. That's not all 50 states shred. Let's see, 170,000 feet of climbing, 98 rides this year so far. So that's pretty good. 1,100 miles, I think. I think that's pretty good. I can't tell. Robert Qatar wants to know, what was my job before I did this full time? I was a web designer. I worked for potsandpans.com, Meyer Cookware, based in Vallejo and Fairfield. And so I worked there. I built web pages, and I kind of kept the catalog up and running for all the pots and pans. This company would add like 1,000 new products a year, and they change everything and change this and change that. So it's like ridiculous the number of stuff that you would have to do to make sure the website was all up and running. And I had there was a web team that I was a part of, a bunch of cool guys. And so that's what I did, and basically had zero effect on anyone in the real world. It's crazy to work at a job that like basically has no impact whatsoever. Making this website that no one would go to, potsandpans.com, is like, it looks exactly the same as it did when I left 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. 5 years ago maybe. But the timeline's weird because I left and then I came back. But it's been the same. It like looks the same for like 5 years, and no one goes there. No one has any impact on it, but it's like, you got to have a website. Going back to what I'm thankful for, I'm very thankful that none of these companies ever realized how good I was and never wanted me to do anything, or like never thought that, oh man, Brian could do this, or like, oh man, I really want to I'm going to promote you to manager, because that would have totally ruined me. It would have totally been like, oh yeah, I'm getting exactly what I want. Oh, I'm gonna make manager. Oh, and then I could be director. Oh, and then I could be vice president. Who gives a shit? Like, God, I'm so glad that none of these, like all these companies were so ineptly run and like didn't see that, oh, you could do this, like in the newspaper and all this stuff, where I was like, oh, I'd be so glad to like, oh, get promoted and do this, where it's like, oh, they didn't have any money, they didn't have any staff, they couldn't do anything. And it's like, my not wanting to move, I think, saved me the most, to create my own thing, to create my own job, to create my own life. If I would have worked for a company that had a ladder to climb, I just would have been on that ladder. I still would be on that ladder. That's all I would be able to see, versus taking a step back and doing your own thing. Tony Mosa wants to know what my 3 favorite rides through the Redwoods are. I can only think of one favorite ride through the Redwoods, and that's the Demo Forest, SoCal Demonstration Forest near Santa Cruz. All the other Redwood rides that I can think of aren't that fun, are kind of lame. Yeah, it's only Demo. Doing Demo 3 times. Peter Simmons wants to know, are you able to share your plans for 2021? Yes, I can. Go back to the earlier on in this podcast and the November Patreon podcast. And like I said, plans change. I hope I can do some special stuff in 2021. Oh man, you wouldn't believe how hard it is to get stuff going, and how many years I've been working on some of this stuff that hopefully will debut in 2021. Charles Kim says, now that you've been to 49 states and sampled quite a bit, what is the future of MTB like, and what needs more work? Man, it's such a young sport that even if I get a little down on, oh man, trails and user access and conflicts, it's such a young sport. It just takes more and more and more of us to get involved. It just takes more people in general, because the 0.1%, the half of 1% of people who actually mountain bike are actually involved in trail advocacy, or actually members of their mountain bike club, actually active members of their mountain bike club, that actually do the red tape, the work, actually step up. I know I'm saying actually a lot, but the rest of us are just here along for the ride, complaining. But it's that small percentage of people that in any venture, in anything, whether it's a business or a community or a sports team, whatever it is, there's only a small percent of people that actually get involved. And you're probably not one of them if you're listening to this. Just statistically, I mean. You probably are. I'm sorry. I'm trying to light a fire under you. Get involved, please. We all need to get involved. Eric Green wants to know if I would consider some bike packing content. Yes, that's actually one of the things that I've talked about over the past few podcasts when people ask me about 2021 is, yeah, I definitely would like to get a couple longer multi-day trips. I think it's really fun. People really loved all the videos. When I ask about what was your favorite BKXC video, pretty much the unanimous answer is that it's the bike packing trip I did with BCPOV and the Chilcotins. And, yeah, I would love to do that. I just need to make it happen. Everyone wants it. Doomy Razvan wants to know if my rotors have ever changed colors after a long and hot descent. Yeah, I think they sometimes will. They'll turn that like hot purple where it's like, whoa, something definitely changed in the metal. Ian Smith says, hey, Brian, I know you're a Niners fan. Are you a Warriors fan too, or not a basketball fan? Man, I am not that much of a basketball fan. I know that they had a historic collapse last year after being so good. Man, sports are so up and down and injuries. So I try to poke my head in and see what's going on and try to keep up on everything, but I'm definitely not the sports fan I once was. Bill Swartzwelder wants to know if I have any holiday traditions that I really look forward to. Yeah, really just the family gatherings, Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, and then Christmas with my small family. Christmas Eve is usually with the big family. But yeah, those are the main traditions. My dad always decorates the house, and he's done a hell of a job decorating the house. He's sending me all these photos of the outside, the inside. So yeah, my mom and dad have done a pretty fun job. We got to actually go see it. Eric Murbrake wants to know if I had the full liberty to make a book, what would it be about? Wow, that's such an interesting question. I guess it would be a self-help book, but I don't know if I really... Man, books are such a weird thing. You really have to have like hours and hours and hours of content, pages and pages and pages of content. It's such a weird medium. I like books. I listen to audiobooks. I don't remember the last time I actually sat down and read a book, but man, it's kind of an antiquated medium. I don't know if there's room in the world for a book. Like if I was going to make a travel guide, I think it would be more of an app, like an interactive kind of thing that's always updating and always changing. Whereas a book is just this thing that you make and it's a monolith and it never changes. It's a little outdated. JM Singletrack wants to know if a premium subscription for an extra charge for extended cuts around 120 minutes would be possible. No, there's no chance of that. There isn't 120 minutes of content on every ride. Those 45-minute extended cuts are like pretty much everything's left in, except for the most mundane. And if there's a market for the most mundane of content, man, I would much rather you have this massive archive of extended cuts here on Patreon. You could queue them up in a playlist. Like I've posted the past few years, and there's one coming up soon of extended cut playlists. I did one for 2017. Yeah, I think I did one for 2016? Whatever it is, I have these extended cut playlists. I'll try to link it in the description here for you. It's just... I could film paint drying, and if people would pay more for it, I guess I'm a fool for not doing it. But no, we're not doing any longer. They're long enough as it is, and I still have to watch this stuff too to edit it. Matthias Schneider wants to know what my best ride in 2020 was. Man, off the top of my head, I really think it was Flying Monkey, St. George, Utah, with bike, sleep, repeat. And man, it pushed me. It pushed my boundaries, and I survived it. And it was like all these wins all along the way. We did Grafton Mesa downhill, and then we did the Flying Monkey Trail in the same day, double shuttle. That was a really, really rad day. It'd be really fun to ride that trail again and see if I could even take it on, because his guiding was awesome, and just such a good job, Nathan. I hope it was Nathan. Man, that's the one thing, the 50-state shred and the names. Oh, brutal. Getting people's names wrong and trying to remember. Oh, I hate it. I hate making people feel bad. Burnt Toast, can you share the inside story about getting to know Trent and Allie? So Trent and Allie are vloggers, van life vloggers. They started their channel years ago, TNT MTB. So Trent was a mountain biker, and he saw basically what I was doing, mountain bike vlogging, and he's like, "Oh man, I want to do this too." And he started making videos with him and his girlfriend Allie, and they didn't really find a good audience just doing the MTB vlog thing. As we have seen, the MTB vlog thing is doesn't seem to be a very replicable thing, even though it does work for some people. But that at that time when I first started out, within the 2016 or so, tons of channels popped up, tons of channels, people trying to do it, and not that many are surviving to this day. But I think they found an audience that they started doing some other stuff, and they did a video about vans and stuff, and they're like, "Oh my god," and the people really love this van life stuff. Oh man. And Trent was like, "We're not going to do a video unless there's mountain biking in it. We're not going to just do, homestead stuff. We're not just going to do this. We're not just going to go eat food." But then eventually they saw the writing on the wall, and they changed the channel name to Trent and Allie, and just went off and just have crazy success right now. If you search for Trent and Allie on YouTube, their videos are crazy successful. They have about the same amount of subscribers as me, but they have like 200,000 views within a day. Like just really crazy. They're building a homestead right now. I visited their homestead in Utah a few months ago before the winter came. So inside story was that Trent was a fan. He may have emailed me. If I go back through the emails, like he may have emailed me or said something, "Hey, if you're ever in Salt Lake City, I'd love to come ride with you. Here's my channel." And I think I'd seen a couple of their videos, and I was like, "Yeah, there's something here for sure." And I sent them this huge long email. I had to find his email somewhere, or I think I just found his email somewhere and said unsolicited advice, and it was just a massive email of change your channel name to Trent and Allie, do this, and like they did all that stuff eventually, and their channel is doing great. I love it. It's so cool that I definitely inspired him to start making content. But then that inspiration only goes so far. A spark only goes so far. You have to have the tinder and the fuel and the fire and the air and the water and everything to make a real thing happen. Jason Finley wants to know how the testing with the Hero 9 is going. Will you be making the switch? There's still more testing to be done. I've got the Max Lens mod ordered. That is the game changer, I think. I'm very hesitant to downgrade my quality, but the horizon leveling is so good. I actually saw somebody riding on the Hero 9 in the wide view instead of the super view, and the wide view with the digital stabilization is amazing, but I really like super view. I think it shows so many things. So still testing. I really have to be confident with the product that I'm putting out, since POV is kind of the main hitch of the channel. But I have to make the switch eventually. There's no, I can't just keep running this ancient setup that isn't sold anymore, and then I have to like harvest parts on eBay and all this stuff. I have to make the switch, and hopefully when I do, it works and it all just goes smooth and it looks good, and it's a better experience instead of a step back. Jerome Anaya wants to know if I take any downtime from riding. Yes, over the past couple months, I've taken plenty of downtime fixing the termites and getting into my attic insulation. And yeah, there's a lot of downtime from riding. I'm very lucky to be able to do that. And 2 videos a week, I can bank content. I can change things up. I could come out with 1 video a week, like right now, where I'm trying to slow things down so I can catch up on the house and the termites and all the other stuff. But yeah, there's plenty of downtime from riding. I feel like I have a pretty amazingly balanced life, and actually I should be diving back in to be a little more obsessed about the videos soon. Ingo Hess wants to know if I listen to any fiction books. Yes, it's not just all self-help and biographies. Basically, my favorite book series is called the Stormlight Archive. It's an epic fantasy book series by Brandon Sanderson. And wouldn't you know, it's the craziest thing. The new book came out 2 weeks ago, and I had no idea. Usually, like Google recommendations, or you'll be in the loop on Twitter or something, and you'll be like, "Oh, this book is coming out." I must not have checked on the series, because Brandon Sanderson is amazing about putting out a book every other year in this series, and he just kills it. And they're friggin' massive books. 700 pages, something like that, 600 pages long, which, goes to like 80 hours on audiobook or 50 hours on audiobook. And it's like amazing. I love it. It's such a cool universe, and fiction is so fun, which it kind of gets me on this other rant about Game of Thrones, which is called A Song of Ice and Fire in the book series. And just the first book is called Game of Thrones. But I love those. Those are awesome audiobooks. They're massive. And those friggin' books are stuck at book 5, book 6, and book 7. Book 6 was supposed to come out this year or last year or 10 years ago. And then the final book. So basically the TV series has passed the books, and once the TV series passed the books, I stopped watching the TV series because they finished it up in their own way, and the TV series ending will probably be similar to the books, but the books will be much more fleshed out. So there's that whole series that takes forever, and who knows, the author, George R. R. Martin's probably going to die before the books ever come out. Then another series, which is called the Kingkiller Chronicles, with this guy Kvothe, and that is an awesome series, but there's only 2 books out, and the third and final book is taking forever to come out, and it'll probably be years, and is it only going to be 3 books now? Why is it taking so long? There's so much in this world that, like, you can't condense it to just the third book. There's got to be more books. And yeah, so there's those 2. The Gentleman Bastards series I also really like, by Scott Lynch. I think he's been pretty good about coming out with books, but man, these epic fantasy novels, you don't want to discover them when they're just coming out, unless you're a Brandon Sanderson fan. That man is prolific. He must have a staff. He probably has like 20 people writing for him, and he's like, yeah, that sounds good. Change this. No, make this happen. Or he's just a maniac, like Stephen King. Like, some of these authors can just get to work and get stuff done, and it is amazing. And then some people are really popular, and they come out with some stuff that really people like, and then they fade away into the darkness. Tom Max wants to know what my favorite tire plug kit is. Yeah, I've tried a couple different tire plug kits. I did not like the Dynaplug at all. I am using the Stans plug kit right now, and I think I used it on a stranger's bike, or maybe someone I was riding with, and I think it worked pretty good. It's supposed to be more of a chemical seal. I guess the Stans plug is supposed to interact with the Stans sealant, or any sealant probably, and to have a better bond. And that one has been pretty good so far, but you just have to buy more replacement plugs, just like everything else. But those replacement plugs are kind of expensive and stuff, but it's very well worth it to get out of the trail with a flat, instead of being like, oh, I can't do it, I'm stuck. I didn't want to spend the extra $20. Yannick Philibert wants to know, as the tow truck pulls up beside me here in the van, if you could not ride Ibis bikes next year, what bike brand model would you choose and why? Oh man, I would have to take a nice long survey of the current action, what's going on out there. There's a couple brands like Gorilla Gravity off the top of my head. I think that'd be kind of cool to check that out, just because there's more of a story there. It's a bunch of guys that started up this American-made bike brand, and that people love it. It's got quite a cult following, so they kind of come to mind, top of mind. Yeti bikes, there's just a million great bikes out there, but I really love the Ibis. I really love the Ripmo. It would be weird if I didn't keep the relationship going. It's like, oh, I love this bike so much, but since they're not paying me anymore, I can't ride it. Like, you kind of work yourself into a corner with this sponsorship stuff. It's been fantastic. I think it's made so much of the 50 State Shred possible. The income, the sponsorship, all that stuff is like so key. It's been a fantastic relationship, but it is weird being sponsored and like, oh, doing this thing. It's like, okay, the end of the year is coming. What's the proposal? What's it going to be? Is it coming? Is it going? All that stuff. So it's very interesting, and it doesn't weigh very heavy on me because the priority is always to make good videos for you guys. The bikes are awesome, but they're not the main thing. The trails are always the main thing. Dan Whitney wants to know what areas of my riding have benefited the most from the coil shock on my bike, and if there are any situations where I wished I had an air shock. No situations where I wished I had the air shock. It's lighter. That's all I know, is that the air shock is lighter. The spring has been great. I like the coil shock. I set it. I forget it. I don't think about it. I cannot tell you if there's been, oh man, the small bump compliance on this part of the trail is not as good. If you have experience with that, if you can add something to the conversation, I'd be love to hear it. But for me, dumb old Brian rides the trail, can't feel a difference. It feels better. It feels good. I don't think about it too much. Rob wants to know, Chick-fil-A McNuggets or McDonald's nuggets? I think this has been asked before, but that's okay, because I still want to reiterate. If we can repeat the same things about my 2021 plans over and over, I'm going to repeat the thing about the McDonald's nuggets. So, McDonald's nuggets are better in the best situation. Like when they're fresh, when they're right out of the fryer, nothing can beat a McDonald's nugget. That being said, consistency at McDonald's is about the worst thing in the world. They can't get it right. You know, they fry it up and it's sitting in the warming tray for like an hour, 2 hours, and McDonald's nuggets can taste horrible when they've just been sitting around all day. The thing you want to see at McDonald's is a busy drive-through or a line out the door. That means that they are not holding stuff over for an hour, 2 hours, sitting in the warming tray. So, that being said, Chick-fil-A nuggets, they're okay. They taste pretty good. They're fine. You get the right dipping sauce, but they are the most consistent. You're never going to be like, oh, these are kind of off. The Chick-fil-A is just the most consistent fast food there is. It's always out quick. It's always great. Service with a smile. So, yeah, it's a whole essay. It's an essay question when it comes to McDonald's versus chicken nuggets. I mean, Chick-fil-A versus McDonald's. Alex says, I hope the COVID vaccine works because I really miss the people interactions, the food spots, and the collaboration videos and series. I also want to see more enduro racing. Yeah, I really do too. I think with my plan for next year to hunker down, to stay in places, hopefully it works. Hopefully I do it. Even thinking about it right now, I'm like, oh God, I wish I had not said anything. I hate promising and I hate changing stuff up and being like, yeah, I had this whole idea and I'm not going to do it. There's several things during the life of the channel where I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. And I told people about it and I regret it. So I regret, I should have just been like, yeah, we'll figure it out. 2021, we'll see how it goes, and been more cagey. But now that I've laid it out on the line, but yeah, more enduro racing. I love it. I love those videos. They're like, when I edit them, my heart's all beating and racing, and it's like, that is so much fun. The bike packing, the enduro racing, and getting to know places. If you see me looking over to the sides, because I'm in the van, I'm looking at my map. Every time I look over, I'm like, oh yeah, what about this place? What about that place? I'm actually looking at the specific locales that I'm like, oh, that'd be a cool place to stay for a month. Johnny AF wants to know, when are we going to see BKXC taking on Zwift group rides? Yeah, that is something I could do. It interests me very little. I have very, very little interest with the Zwift group rides. It could be cool. It could be fun. I don't know. It's like, if I'm doing it on a video live, it's like, I can't just sit there and do it. I have to be talking. So if I'm talking all the time, I'm trying to be entertaining, and I'm sure I could do it where it's like, hey, we just show up and we just ride, and I'm not on mic. You just see my avatar there, but it's interesting. I may revisit. I think every year around this time, I'm like, okay, let's try Zwift. Okay, let's try this. Let's try that. And then I'm like, by February, I'm over it. Jacob Bowl says when he's starting off a ride, he always feels the most sluggish out of the gate, the first 2 miles, and then he gets a lot better. I don't have too much of a warm-up thing. I almost always just get out on the trail and I go too fast at the beginning, and then I get sluggish after the first 2 miles because I go too hard. But I think that's most people have to warm up. And, the first 2 miles are pretty like, okay, your body's just getting used to it, and then you get going. I think that's pretty normal. Andrew Brandon says, instead of riding a trail system, moving on right away, and only riding the B-lines due to unfamiliarity, how about riding the same trail enough times to complete the puzzle? Yeah, I think that would be a very cool thing. The thing about those videos is that it's a lot of work for a little bit of reward. It's like, okay, let me be here for 4 days working on one video versus going to 4 different places and showing off 4 different things in 4 days and doing 4 different videos. So that's the balance of power when it comes to, breaking through and getting this piece of the puzzle. I actually got that drop. So that's always the battle, as the breadth or the depth. And I like showing off different places. And our final question today is from Nathan Blatchley. Given the endless fires, have you considered relocating your home base to somewhere else? What would be the criteria to the next best home base? Well, this is also a question I get asked every month, but I am happy to answer it every month because it's always interesting. So My number one place for mountain biking homestead is North Carolina. Western North Carolina, it's near Seth. There's a million different mountain bike rides. The Brevard area is just a complete gold mine. If it's on your mind to move, to get out of town, that's where it is. I have Zillow alerts set up all the time. The houses are decently affordable, but I'm sure every single day they're just selling. More people like me are moving out and there because it's a pretty good spot. That being said, I'm never going to really move full-time to North Carolina. I'm never going to move full-time from where I live because of all the things I've talked about. My family. I don't want to be too far from my family, but nowadays you can hop on a flight and you can go be at your other place. Maybe I'll be bi-coastal someday where I have a house over in North Carolina and stay there for a couple months, and then I come back and a couple months here, a couple months there. Because, yeah, it's amazing how you could be an hour away from your family and still never see them, or you could be 5 minutes away and still never see them. So it's really about the effort that you make to visiting and being a part of people's lives, especially now with texts and photos and all that stuff. You can be a huge part of someone's life, even if you're very, very far away. So yeah, that would be my go-to spot, and hopefully it doesn't get overrun by the time I'm able to afford a house out there or make a move out there. That would be very, very cool. But yeah, my brother is actually very worried about the climate change and the fires, and there's like online things that you can be like, okay, in 20 years, what will the climate of the San Francisco Bay Area look like? Oh, it will look like Baja, Mexico. Like it will look like, dang it, Cabo San Lucas, or there's some thing where you can say oh, in 20 or 30 years, the climate's going to change that much. Obviously, it's all projections. Obviously, it'll probably be worse than that. So it'll be very interesting to see how all of that develops over the next few years, and just how Maine and the northern states are the only states that will be hospitable. There won't be snow there anymore. Awesome. Thank you for all the questions. I always enjoy it, even if I'm joking a little bit about asking the same questions over and over. Obviously, you guys didn't hear, or you do want to know, and there's enough of a turnover where people hear them and do hear them and don't hear them. It's fine. I don't mind answering them over and over again. There's questions. Sometimes I'll skip a question every once in a while. I was like, I'm not going to answer that. Moving on. So I do it because I love you, because I like busting balls and being a smartass. I cannot help myself. It's just in my blood. So yeah, let's get going. Let's roll on December. Keep this moving, and thanks for listening. I'll see you on the trail.